Hello everyone and welcome to tutorial 8. It's been a while since I've recorded a tutorial, partially because I was trying to figure out how best to introduce some of the new concepts without getting too complicated in terms of the music theory. But I figured that I did want to bridge some different scales tonight, and I wanted to introduce two different techniques that are used in improvisation and in classical music in general with you. This is going to be a longer tutorial, maybe about an hour long. I'm not sure exactly, but it's going to center around the key of C minor. And I figured because it's October, Halloween, I would center on a minor scale. And instead of doing the A minor scale that we did last time, I wanted to switch to a C minor scale, give you another scale to work with. So we're going to talk about the three different minor scales in C. We're going to talk about some of the chord progressions that I would suggest playing around with in the C minor scale. We're going to talk about motifs or ostinatos, which are like repeated patterns that are used in many types of music, but in improvisation, that kind of helps ground the improvisation. I don't use them rigidly, but I do use them to kind of keep a motif going on and a style of the music. And then also there's a concept of counterpoint, where there's two voices that are complementary but different. And they complement each other, but they could be in different rhythm, they can be different notes and so forth. But they have to be complementary in terms of the tone, or else it will become conflicting. So, to start with tonight, I wanted to talk about the C minor scales first, because that is like the foundation of talking about counterpoint, talking about any type of motif you might want to create in an improvisation. And also, it's important in terms of understanding the different chord progressions. So, the first scale I want to talk about, there's actually three minor scales in every key on the keyboard. I'm going to focus specifically on C tonight, the C minor scales. The first scale I'm going to introduce is C minor natural scale. So it's the natural C minor scale. These three scales differ by different notes, slightly different notes, and one of them is more complicated than the other two. But we'll start with the C natural minor scale. That is a C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, and back down again. B flat, A flat, G, F, E flat, D, and C. So if you're playing along or you've got your own instruments, work on just going up and playing that scale over and over again. Maybe a couple different octaves. Okay, so that's the C natural scale. Now, there's a variation on that called the C harmonic scale, and that changes from the natural scale by one note. Instead of using a B flat, you use a B natural in the key signature. So it's C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B natural, C. That's the harmonic minor. Now, the difference is between those two is one note from B natural to B flat. So the C minor natural scale includes the B flat, and the C minor harmonic scale includes B natural. So the last note before the C, there's a B. That's called an augmented seventh from the A flat to B natural. So that's the harmonic, and here's the natural. You can hear it's kind of a little bit of different tonal structure as you listen to it. It has a different feel to it. Now, there's one more variation. This is a little bit complicated in the minor scales, but the variation is called the melodic minor scale. The C minor melodic scale is quite a bit different because going up, it's one set of keys, and going down, it's another. So here is the pattern. It's C, D, E flat, and then F, G, A natural, B natural, C natural. So no flats at all, they're going up. But then coming down, it goes to the natural. So it goes down to B flat and A flat instead of B natural and A natural. It's a very unique scale, but it is used in music a lot to kind of help flow between textures and so forth. But the key in the minor scales is that you know those variations and you can accommodate those in your improvisation. The key, no pun intended, for C minor is there is always an E flat in there. But the A and the B are a little bit flexible. A flat, B flat, or A natural, B natural, depending on what you're doing in the motif at the time. So, going over it again, C natural minor, two flats, A flat, B flat, and C. Get used to that. Just play around with it with your... Again, one of the things that you want to do as you're doing improv is to get your fingers limbered up with different scales as you're practicing. And even together helps your fingers and your mind to coordinate the fact that you're playing two notes together. So it helps your dexterity. So that's the C natural, the C harmonic, C minor harmonic, and then the weird C minor melodic, which is different going up than it is going down. Going up, it's unique. Going down, it's the natural minor. So I'd like you to just spend some time, maybe even shut off the tutorial, get comfortable with those three different modes of C minor scale. The natural, the harmonic, and the melodic minor. Okay. Now, as you get used to those, you're gonna realize as you're playing those scales that they each have kind of a different tonality about them, a different purpose, and kind of it provides an anticipation of what's coming next, depending on the scale you play. But once you've got all those down and you're playing in the key of C minor, you can leverage those different scales to create some very unique improvisational techniques. And you'll also use those as you get into things like counterpoint and building your motifs or your ostinatos or whatever you want to call this repeated pattern in creating a improvisational piece. So let's do those scales one more time. Natural, and then harmonic, and then melodic minor. This reminds me of like a windstorm coming in and out. So as you get comfortable with that and you're getting your technique down, then you can start to say, okay, how do I create a motif, a theme in this particular key? Well, if you're creating a theme in the key, you don't want to play notes that are not in that scale. That's why it's really important to get comfortable with playing those different scales, because if you play a note that's outside the scale, unless it's just a grace note going down to a regular note, it's not going to sound, excuse me. My alarm going off. It's not going to sound as natural as if you stay in the scale itself. So when I am doing, let's say, a motif, so if I decide that I want to go ahead and play a piece around this this simple motif, let's just make a simple one. Okay, so that one is this pattern is G, C, G, E flat, D natural, C natural. Now, on my right hand, as I'm doing that pattern, I can move around within that scale and play around and see how it sounds. Okay, let's just try this. So if you get used to this, first of all, work on building a pattern with your left hand. And then you can, on the motif, you can actually make a variation on it. So instead of like, so that one was like C, G, E flat, C, G, A flat. Again, remember A flat is in the C natural and the C harmonic scale, and then down to a B natural, which is in the harmonic scale to C. So now I'm going to go up one so you can hear it a little bit better. But now I'm going to play around with the right hand and first of all, get used to that pattern. Now, on this hand, I'm going to play different notes, but I'm going to stay in the scale here. Now, that did not that didn't mesh too well, but it still worked because I was in the scale. I was making sure I was still in the C minor scale of some way. So So the idea with a counterpoint is that the one hand is doing a different pattern than the other hand. And as you get good at it, you're going to part of this is playing around and seeing what sounds good and inverting things and so forth. But when you're doing counterpoint with just two notes, it is something it's an acquired art form as you play around. But a lot of pipe organists, when they're doing like improvisation or they're doing quiet interludes within a church service, they're doing a lot of that where you're in the key signature and you're just playing around within that key signature with multiple voices at the same time. It doesn't have to be two notes, it could be multiple notes. So when I do improvisation, I'm in that key of C minor, but I might have multiple keys that I'm playing on my right hand, but it's within that key signature. So here we go. The concept is that you're playing all those notes within the confines of the scales that you know about the C minor chord structures. And because the A and the the A and the B are flexible, A flat and B flat, or A natural, B natural, play around with it, get an idea. Both of those variations fit within the C minor scales, so they don't sound too out of place either way. The concept is those are the notes, though, that you want to include in your counterpoint. They are the most compatible with anything that you're playing in that scale. So So I was just making that motif up, but the key is that as you're playing the different your the two hands, that you want to be within the key signature that you are playing in. So in the C minor scale, you don't want to be in a scale like this. That doesn't work. Like these chords right there, or these keys, just don't work. But these. So if you look at those, what I'm not playing anything that is not in one of those scales: C natural, C minor natural, or C minor harmonic, or C melodic minor. So again, those are the keys that I'm playing together when I'm making these chord, the patterns or a counterpoint. Okay, so counterpoint is really the concept of you're playing two different things at the same time, but they are again complementary to each other. The concept of a ostinato or a motif is that you're doing a repeated pattern over and over again, and somebody gets used to that pattern, and it sounds like people start to recognize that pattern. And as you get comfortable, your audience gets comfortable with that pattern, they anticipate it. Having said that, one of the things about improvisation that's so fun is you're not tied to anything. You can go ahead and change the pattern anytime. But if you change it too fast and too often, you're going to lose your audience. So you want to make sure you stay in the keys that you're playing in, and you stay in the chord progressions that people are comfortable with. And as you change over time, not too fast and not too often. Okay, so that's the concept of counterpoint introduced is just trying. There's many deep techniques associated with counterpoint. We won't go into the detail on that because I don't want you to be thinking about it in your brain as much as I want you to be playing on the keyboard to get your technique down. So again, the bigger thing is to remember the scales, remember the notes that are in the C minor scale. Those notes are these. Okay. So those are the notes that you've got access to. You're not going to use these two. You're not going to use a C sharp. You're not going to use a F sharp. But once you know those notes, then within that context, you can play around and see what sounds good. And in most cases, it will be compatible with what you're playing because, again, you're playing the notes within the scale of C minor, one of its variations. Okay? Now I'm going to also introduce a couple other chords for you within the C minor scale. One of them is the relative fourth minor, which is an F minor. That's F, A flat, and C. And as you'll notice, it is the A flat in there, which is, again, part of each of the minor scales of C minor. So it's a C minor. C minor chord is C, E flat, and G. That is the tonic, and then the inversions are up, okay, so it's E, C, E flat, and G. And then the one chord is an F minor, which is an F, A flat, and C. Okay. Get used to that. Go from C minor, C, E flat, and G to an F minor, F, A flat, and C. Now, then go up to its relative fifth. That's a G, and it's a G major chord, I want you to remember. G major. G is G, B, and D. So, first chord is C minor, C, E flat, and G, and then F minor, F, A flat, C, and then G major is G, B, and D, and then C minor. So there's 3 chords in a chord progression. Now, so those are 3 chords. I want you to add another chord. After you get used to playing those 3 chords, the C minor, the F minor, the G major, the C minor, I want you to go to an A flat major, which is A, C, and E flat. A flat, C, and E flat. Okay? And then there's another chord I want you to remember is that there's an A flat, which is one above the G major. It's just one half tone above. Every note goes up one half tone. And then you go down to the F minor key. But with the F minor key, you're playing a 6th, which is a D included. So it's F, A flat, C, and D. F, A flat, C, and D. And from there, you can go to a G major, to a C minor. Okay. Those are the chords. C minor, F minor, F, A flat, and C, G major, G, B, and D, A flat major, A, C, and E flat, down to an F minor again, but with a D in the top hand. And then to a G chord, down to a C minor. Okay? Now listen to what happens when I just use those chords in the minor, C minor scale. C minor, F minor, G major, A flat major, F minor 6th, F minor with a D at the top, a G major, now a C minor with an E flat as the bass, so it doesn't resolve. Hear that? The bass is an E flat, not a C. Now I'm going to play a G major again, but I'm going to use a B natural for the bass. And now a C minor chord. Now an F minor chord with an A flat on the bass. Again, an F minor with a D above it. So, with just those chords, you can create a very rich, minor, intense structure, chord structure. And it's pretty cool. So, that now, one other thing. We're in the key of C minor. And again, the key of C minor, the natural minor, is there. So I'm going to go back to making this a little bit simple. Let's see, little simpler sound. So the C natural minor scale is related to another major scale, a third above, which is an E flat major scale. So the same keys that I am playing for the C minor natural scale, if I start, instead of on the C, I start on the the E flat, play the exact same notes. I am no longer in a minor key, I am in a major key. Listen to the difference. So here is the C minor natural scale. Now, if I go up just 2 notes to the E flat, and I play the same notes all the way up to the E flat again, listen to what it sounds like. That's a major scale. That's called the relative major of the C minor natural scale. Sorry. So it's pretty cool because that occurs for every scale on the keyboard. But for the C minor tonight, I want you to remember that C minor, the relative major is E flat major. And E flat is E, G, E flat, G, and B flat. So here's another chord I want you to remember. That's E flat. E flat major. That's E flat, G, and B flat. So, see, those are related. So even though I'm in a minor key here, I can add a variation to my music that sounds very related. But it changes from a minor tonality, which is deep and kind of melancholy, to a major chord, which is more upbeat and lively. So, one of the things that relative major is used for is to create a variation in an improvisation. So many times if you listen to me playing a minor key, I will go into a major chord structure for a while, and then I'll go back to the minor. that is typically, I go from the minor key to its relative major. So the minor to the relative major. So that can give additional variations on your motif as you're expanding it out and you're creating uh, a diverse sound palette of chords. So let me go ahead and do a few experiments here. I'm going to play some counterpoint first. Again, remember we got the three scales now. Let's go back to those scales. The C minor natural scale. B is an C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. And then up and down. That one doesn't change, the C minor natural. Then the C minor harmonic is one note different. Again, it's the B, from the B flat, it goes to the B natural. And then the C melodic minor, which is different going up than coming down. Get used to that. Just go, because that'll help you with your technique. It'll help you with runs. It'll help you with what do I play next if I am improving and I'm in the moment. What's that next key I want to play? Well, if you don't know what it is, but you know what the key signature is, you can play whatever's in that key signature and it won't be too far off. It may not sound perfect, but it will sound complementary. That's the key. Was you getting into improvisation, pick a chord, pick a key, a scale, stay in that scale, and stay in the notes of that scale and the variations of that scale. And again, with the minor, you have a little bit more diversity because you have the three different variations, natural, harmonic, and melodic. And therefore, you have two extra notes, the A flat, the B flat, and the A natural and B natural. So you have a lot of flexibility as you're playing in the minor key. And then remember that once you're in C minor, the relative major is really the third of that scale, which is an E flat, and that is the E flat is the major, relative major. Okay? With those techniques, you can build some very interesting minor related chord structures and improvisations. I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to play something starting with a violin and cello. And I've got in my Phantom here, I've got a cello and violin. So that's the cello, and then my violin is up here. There's a split right here between the cello. So right here is where the violin kicks in. Okay, so the really cool thing about this is if you've got a keyboard and you can set it up with some, this is more counterpoint. So I got a cello on one hand, I got a violin. Just by the sheer nature of those two sounds, those two instruments, typically you listen to those one note at a time. So this is a good combination for playing a two-part counterpart. Now you hear, see, I'm going to go. I could play the natural, C natural minor, or I could play there's the harmonic. Has a different feel, doesn't it? And now I'm going to the natural minor. So playing around between the B natural and the B flat can really have some very interesting, unique ways of being creative in the moment and keeping your audience on its toes a little bit while still being in the scale that you're working on. So the relative the minor. And when you're playing a counterpoint like that, the key is you could play all over that keyboard. You can play all the notes within the scales and the variations on those scales, whether it be the natural, the harmonic, or the melodic. But the key is, no pun intended, the thing is at the end, you want to end with being in the tonic. So basically the C minor scale, the C minor chord again, which is again the C, B flat, or E flat, and G. All I'm doing there, if you remember the chords that we picked before, we picked the C minor, and then the F minor, the G major, A flat major, and then the F minor with the sixth, with a D. That's all I'm playing, except I am now playing the individual notes within those chords. And I'm moving around the keyboard within the scale, within any variation of the minor scale of C. The beauty is that there's so much flexibility. Once you get comfortable with those three minor scales, you can play those minor scales in any key from C minor to A minor to F minor, anything. But right now we're going to focus on C minor because it's the patterns that are really the key for you, is to understand understand the patterns of each of those particular scales and the chords within that scale. Memorize those in the key of C minor, and you have so much flexibility and power to create within that key signature. So I'm going to finish up this tutorial with about a 15-minute improvisation that is going to vary all over the board. I'm going to start with the cello and violin. I'm going to get into full pipe organ in a little bit. I'm going to move around, and I'll stay, though, on these keyboards to give you an idea of the variations just with what we learned tonight. The chord progressions that we talked about, the different chords, and the scales that we talked about, and then using counterpoint and a repeated pattern or motif. Okay? I'm going to change to a piano here. A flat major. Now I'm going to switch to a full pipe organ. G major, C minor with a E flat on the bass, F minor, C minor with a G on the bass, A flat, F minor with a D on the top, G major, F minor. Now I'm going to do a little bit of variation on that by just moving up the scale on my bass. Once you get comfortable with those chord progressions, you can actually play variations on those chords to make them richer, make them more dissonant, and complement the tension. So, okay, that is it. Let's go through one more time. Again, the C natural. C harmonic. And the C melodic minor. C F minor. Now the other thing you can do is instead of going straight to the G major key, one of the cool things is you can keep the pedal note or the low note on the F and go from an F to a G. That makes a dissonance. So now I'm going to go from F minor to G major, but I'm going to hold the F on the bass. And then make a C minor. Now, watch what I'm going to do next. A, there's the relative major. Now I'm going to go to an A flat major to an F minor with a D, G major, down to a C minor. I'm going to add one more chord here, which is a B major. B major. So, okay. So, we covered a lot of territory tonight. I would spend a lot of time getting comfortable with those three variations of minor scale, getting comfortable with the notes in the C minor regiment of tools. That's an arsenal that you have to work. Get comfortable with doing some counterpoint. If you've got an instrument that you can split the keyboard, change up the instruments and try some single voice tones like flutes. For example, here's the flute. Okay, so you can do it with practically any tone that you want to play around with. If you use something like a cello or a violin or a flute, it gives you kind of the impetus not to play like a piano where you're playing chords, and you get used to the really creating different what should I say, sequences of keys with your two hands within the confines of the scale that you're in. That way, as you start to build independence between your two hands, it's almost like your mind can split into two and you're listening to both sounds at the same time. And as you start to build that technique of listening to both of your fingers playing at the same time, you'll start to anticipate possibly what you want to play next. If you don't know, just play one of the keys that is in the scale. And it's a very rich scale, especially C minor scale, because like I said, you have quite a few notes within the variations of that C minor scale. Okay? All right, that's all for tonight. I hope this isn't too much to digest in one tutorial. I hope it's understandable, and let me know what you think, and we'll keep going from here. So take care, God bless, and good night.